Thank you for joining us today for an update on the population assessment and conservation of the critically endangered Ruppell's vulture with Veronica Dandzo-Adzagudu. If you are joining us from Salt Lake County, Utah, this presentation is made possible by Salt Lake County Zoo Arts and Parks. And if you're joining us from anywhere else in the world, welcome. This fantastic work is made possible by your support, as well as the presentation being made possible by your support. So thank you so much for your generosity. I'm joined today by Veronica, who will be sharing a final update on her work to study the critically endangered Ruppell's vulture. She was awarded HawkWatch International's Global Raptor Research and Conservation Grant in early 2021. She was an inaugural recipient. The grant was developed by HawkWatch International in 2020 to invest in projects addressing global raptor research and conservation priorities. And we are just thrilled with everything that Veronica has been able to accomplish, including during a global pandemic. So, Veronica, thank you so much for being here. I know it's getting late in Ghana, and so we're just really thankful that you're here. So, please tell us more about all the work that you've been able to accomplish.
Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, depending on where you are joining us from today. Just as Kirsten already introduced me, I'm Veronica. I'm a Ghanaian and I'm based in Ghana. In 2021, I was awarded this grant to conduct this research, and so far it's been an amazing time in the field collecting data, and today I'll be presenting my results and recommendation and everything, and I welcome your questions afterwards. So my presentation today would follow this outline, a brief background to vulture conservation in the world and globally, my project goal and objectives, my methodology, my results, outcomes, and next steps for this project. So yeah, globally, we know that vultures are in the limelight of conservation. And in Africa, it's interesting to know that out of the 11 vultures that occur in Africa, 7 of them are either endangered or critically endangered, which is very alarming. And the Ruppell's vulture is not an exception. According to BirdLife, according to BirdLife International, the species has declined by at least 90% over a period of 43 years, which is not really a good news. And this has been attributed to habitat loss, persecution, hunting for trade, and loss of ungulate population. And then one other key feature about the Ruppell's vulture is that they, just like other vultures in the Gyps genus, they have a large range size. So they travel, even if they are found in protected areas, they travel outside protected areas. And once they travel outside protected areas and spend time within human places close to human habitation, they are exposed to anthropogenic activities in those areas. And in Ghana, Ruppell's vultures have been extirpated in most of its known ranges. So from this map here, this is a map, a range map from IUCN website. The yellow portion here, this is the only part in Ghana where the species can be found according to IUCN. And this area is in the northern part of Ghana, specifically in the upper west region and the newly designated Savannah region. And within this area is Mole National Park, which is the only protected area in Ghana where one can find the Ruppell's vulture. This being said, there is lack of data on the population size of the Ruppell's vulture, the local threat that the species face in Ghana, and breeding areas as well. So the goal of this research or project was to provide relevant data to inform conservation and management decisions to save the species from local extinction in Ghana. So in line with this, we identified four objectives. One of them is to determine the current population of the species in Mole National Park. The second is to identify breeding areas of the species in the park, and also assess local knowledge and use of the species and threats within communities. It is one key thing to note that Mole National Park is the largest park in Ghana, and it is surrounded by at least 30 fringe communities. So yeah, it's a key thing to do to assess traditional knowledge and the use of the species within those areas. And the last objective was to raise conservation awareness about the species in these fringe communities and in schools as well. So moving on to my methodology, the original plan was to conduct just one season data collection in Mole National Park. But thankfully, we were awarded another funding from the Wilson Ornithological Society. So that made it possible for us to conduct both wet season data collection and dry season data collection. With HawkWatch International funding, we wanted to do only dry season data collection. However, we experienced challenges in obtaining research permits, so that delayed the first field trip. So we started with the wet season first and then continued with the dry season, which I think was also a very good thing we did. During the wet season, we used randomly selected transects, only randomly selected transects, and vantage observation points like water bodies like dams, pools, and stream areas. And we started surveys in the morning as early as 8. By 8 a.m., we started field work, and it lasted to 12 p.m. So 4 hours in the morning and then 1 hour in the afternoon. And we surveyed for a total of 7 days in the wet season. Then in the dry season, based on the data we collected in the wet season, we decided to adjust the dry season data collection method a bit. So we included camera trapping at carcass points with randomly selected transect walks. And that also started in the morning and around 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. and in the afternoon around 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Also a total of 70 hours, that is within 7 days during that period. We used, each of the survey team members used a pair of binoculars and GPS to take GPS points, coordinate points. So in total, we did 140 hours of survey within the park for both seasons. Now for identifying and mapping breeding sites, we searched for potential areas that could be breeding sites for the Ruppell's vulture, including known areas that are breeding sites for vultures. So we did this alongside the transect walks to count the Ruppell's vulture, to search and count for the Ruppell's vulture. And then also to assess the local knowledge, threats, and then use of the species within fringe communities. We administered 120 semi-structured questionnaires in 4 fringe communities of Mole National Park. And these communities were selected based on their proximity to the Mole National Park, and also bearing in mind where the survey team was residing. So after data collection, we used SPSS version 20 for data analysis. And then to raise awareness within fringe communities and schools in around Mole National Park, we did, due to logistic constraints, we did awareness raising whilst administering questionnaires. So at the end of every questionnaire administration, we would sensitize or educate the respondent about the importance of vultures in our ecosystems and how local people can contribute to conservation of vultures in the long term. 2 community schools were engaged in vulture conservation awareness, and we used tailored PowerPoint presentations and videos of vultures feeding on carcass just to depict the role of vultures in our ecosystem. So moving to our key results from the project. Maybe fortunately and unfortunately, but I think this is still a good news. We recorded 1 immature Ruppell's vulture on our camera traps in the dry season. And in the wet season, no Ruppell's vulture was sighted, neither did we sight any breeding area or nest for the species in both of the seasons. However, we also sighted other vulture, critically endangered and least concerned vulture species within the park. This includes the hooded, white-headed, white-backed, and the palm-nose vulture. We also recorded 3 white-backed vulture nests within the survey period. So I would like to show you a video that we captured on our camera trap. And in the 21st minute, you would see a Ruppell's vulture from the bottom right corner joining the crew of vultures feeding on the carcass. So before I play the video, I'd like you to know that for the camera trapping at carcass point method, we had to rely on transit works to search for carcass because of the short duration, we were not allowed to bring in carcass from outside the park because we still had to go through veterinary process protocols, which we didn't account for this project. And so we had to do transit work to look for carcass and also talk to the patrol team to get information on where we can find the carcass. But fortunately for us, during one of our field work, we found a dead corpse and we used that as our carcass. We just mounted a camera trap there, and the camera trap took videos and images of vultures that came to feed over there. So I'd like you to watch this video, and in the 21st second, you will see a Ruppell's vulture joining the crew right from my right bottom. Yeah, I think this is just 1 minute video or less. So that is it. That is the Ruppell's vulture that just joined the crew, and it's also going to feed on the dead carcass. Now the picture. Now the picture to my top right, there is a blue arrow that points to the Ruppell's vulture, just for more identification and recognition of the species. Yes, so we found only one species within the park. And then from our questionnaire administration, 38 out of the 120 respondents were able to identify the species and the Ruppell's vulture, I mean, and they mentioned that they have ever sighted them within their communities. So what we did was that from this picture, you can see that I'm showing them a picture of 4 different vultures. So I would ask them, have you ever sighted this in your community? When you say yes or no, I would also ask for the local name for the species. So yeah, these people were able to give local names for the species, and some of the names are just common names to the white-headed, the whiteback, and the hooded vultures. Now, most of the areas that the respondents mentioned that they saw the Ruppell's vulture include farm areas, refuse dams, and within Mole National Park. And mostly the species was feeding when they sighted it. Now, from our data, we realized that there are 2 main potential threats that the species might be going through within the area, and this includes traditional medicine, as 16% of the respondents mentioned that they were aware that the species is being captured and used for traditional medicine. The other thing is poisoning from drugs and DDT used to control pests and livestock, like used to treat livestock and diseases. although this is not, we can't really say that, okay, this is going on, we just need to conduct more researches, questionnaire administration in the rest of the communities, especially livestock owners and farm owners, to establish the threats that the species is facing within the area. Now, during the conservation awareness creation, we spoke to about 350 local people through during the questionnaire administration. Like I mentioned earlier, after administering the questionnaires, we take the opportunity to educate the local people on vulture conservation. And again, the two schools that we engaged in vulture conservation awareness came along with 60 students each, who were very, very active during the engagement and showed interest in more future engagements. Now, I'd like to point out some important outcomes and recommendations. So from our survey, we concluded that the abundance of Ruppell's vulture within Mole National Park is very, very low. And this is confirmed by past researches that have been done by, for example, Di Vittorio and Petrozzi and Goddard et al. Di Vittorio also used randomly selected transect to search for vultures. Goddard also used transect to search for vultures for a period of 3 years, from 2019 to 2021. However, in Goddard, she never cited the Ruppell's vulture. But then in Di Vittorio, they cited a species but categorized it as a very rare vulture species in Mole National Park. We also conclude that recording an immature suggests the presence of breeding populations still existing in the park. So more extensive research would give us a fair idea or better understanding of the population status of the species within the park. Now, again, I think this video footage and photographs we have of the species provides evidence and could be the very first evidence of the existence of the species in the park that would be available to Mole National Park management. I say this because before we started the survey, we tried to talk to patrol team members, management of the park, to know whether they have any idea of where we can find the species, maybe breeding areas and that, but then they did not have any idea where the species could be found. So this is very exciting for them as well. And furthermore, looking at the two methods that we employed, the randomly selected transect and the camera trap at Kakas Point, we think that a well-coordinated camera trapping at Kakas Point during the dry season can yield better results for us to better understand the population status and make conclusion about the species in the park. Now, looking at how difficult it was for us to even encounter one individual of the species, it was difficult for us to find breeding sites. So we think that breeding site studies would require long-term monitoring, which may involve capturing and tagging of the species. Local knowledge, use, and threat to the species in fringe communities has been surveyed, and this has been established. However, we need to do more surveys or research to cover almost every community fringing Mole National Park, so that we can have a better idea of what is happening to the species, and then we can act fast as well. From this project, we have established that local people are willing to engage in activities to protect vultures. As we saw through our questionnaire administration, more than 50% of the respondents were willing to engage in conservation activities to protect vultures. And the 60 students who came for the vulture conservation campaign also showed interest, as they they were willing to be part of a vulture club within their schools. Now I move to challenges we encountered during this research. The first of all was obtaining our research permit. The amount we budgeted for the research permit was, it turned out to be way lower than what we actually had to pay, because the prices of stuff has increased. But thankfully, again, to the Wilson Ornithology Society, and we were able to pay for the research permit. And then estimating the species population was, estimating the population of the species was challenging. So at the end of this research, we were expecting that, we could estimate the population of the species. But since we encountered or recorded just one individual, that has been difficult for us. And also, like I recommended, that camera trapping at carcass points would be a very good method to use. Reliance on carcass in the park could be very challenging, and so we were not able to identify and map the breeding areas of the site. COVID-19, of course, was a challenge to us. For our next step, we would like to publish this result in a peer-reviewed journal. We would also like to secure additional grants to conduct extensive research, and I'm also open to collaboration. We would also want to assess local knowledge and threats in at least 70% of the fringe communities. We'd like to scale up community conservation awareness, establish vulture conservation clubs, and attend trainings in vulture capturing and tagging. These are my references, and I would like to say a big thank you to HawkWatch International for providing the very first grant for this project. I would like to thank all the collaborators and the survey team, and for all those who are present today to listen to this presentation. Thank you very much. You can connect with me through these social media platforms. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time, Veronica. This has been really great. I feel like ever since we gave you this award, I know that I've received emails from you, other folks on our team have, we've written some blogs, but it's just so different to be able to hear from you and to hear your passion for this work. So thank you for being here. I've got a couple of questions in the chat, but if anyone else has any more, please feel free to drop those there. You can ask Veronica about Ruppell's vultures, generally about her research, any questions you had during the presentation, and you can ask us any questions you have about the Global Raptor Grant. So I know COVID has kind of hung over all of this, Veronica. Can you share a little bit more about just how difficult it was to do this research during COVID-19 versus other times you've done field work like this?
Yeah. So basically, we all know COVID restricted human interactions. So for the engagement, we couldn't have a conservation awareness campaigns with all the 5 community schools, because at that time GS had put out a directive that no external engagement was supposed to be done within the school premises. So but then, since this was part of the project and some of the schools were willing to come on board, we had to set up a meeting outside the school premises. Yeah, which went very well.
I'm glad you were able to go to the outside option. We had to do that with some of our work in Utah too, and yeah, it's amazing how much we can still accomplish when we get creative. So you were looking at the abundance of Ruppell's vultures, trying to figure out this population assessment in Mole National Park, and you only found one. We have a question. Is there any information about the historical abundance of Ruppell's vultures in this area? Like, were there lots at some point in the past, or what do we know?
Okay, so I'll start from the park management. The park management, I would say they do not have any adequate information about the species within the park. Secondly, the Divitorio, yeah, published an article and confirmed that I think he or she categorized the Ruppell's vulture as very rare. However, then there was no record of numbers or anything. And then additionally, during our project, we had to establish very good communication with the park management of Mole National Park. So they communicated to us this year that a group of bird watchers were in the park, and they counted about 4 of them in last year November. So yeah.
So there's
So I would,
really not been much information on this species in this area at all prior
yeah,
to your work.
yeah.
Wow. That's great. I mean, I know that you were hoping to see more to be able to establish this population estimate, but it seems like this was very telling, the lack of finding them. Um, what about you said that that people were aware of these vultures in the community, and I know you said that some of the students or some of the folks mentioned they wanted to be involved in the conservation. Is that the feeling generally in these communities? Do people feel positive about the Ruppell's vultures? Do they feel negative about them?
So when we started asking questions about the species and all of that, you would realize that okay, people are not really interested. But as we go through the conservation education, they begin to show interest. Oh, okay, this is the importance of vultures in the community within our ecosystem. Then we would love um, to do what we can do to protect them.
That's great to hear. We have another question, kind of related to this work. So you didn't see many Ruppell's vultures, but you did see other species of vultures. Did
Yeah.
you do counts of those, like of the hooded, white-headed, and white-backed with this project?
Um, in the beginning, we didn't do match counts, but so because we just concentrated on the Ruppell's vulture. But when we realized that we were not finding them, we decided to take coordinates where we find sorry, where we find a hooded, a white-backed, yeah, etc. But for the white-backs, most of them we recorded at the carcass point, as you saw in the video.
Do you have any results that you can share with our audience about the numbers of those species? I think we might be having a little bit of a technical difficulty here. If you can still hear me, if you wouldn't mind dropping in the chat to let me know if you're all still connected. Um, Hopefully we'll get that answer from Veronica soon. Okay, great. We're all still here. So maybe we lost Veronica. While we're waiting on Veronica to pop back on, and hopefully she will, and be able to get that answer because I'd love to have that too. I'll just mention that if you or anyone that you know is interested in global raptor research and conservation, we are going to be offering the grant again this year. We're still working out the final details about dates on when the application will open and when it will close and all of those good deals. But when we do, we will announce it on our website and we'll also announce it via email. So I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat for that grant. And like I said, if you know someone who is doing really great work globally for raptor research and
And
conservation, we'd love it. Hi, Veronica.
Yeah, I think I lost you for some minutes.
Yes, I think so. I just decided to chat with folks about the grant and remind people that we'll be offering it again this year. So
Okay.
we were asking you if you had any data you could share about other vulture species you might have counted during the project.
Yeah. So roughly during the project, I think we counted both, like I said, whitebags, white-headed, hooded vulture, and palm-nose vulture. The most abundant was the were the whiteback and the hooded vultures. So from the camera trap video, you would see that there were lots of whiteback vultures in there, with just about 4 or 5, at most 10 hooded vultures at the carcass point. But then from the transect surveys, we counted, I think, quite a number of hooded vultures. They were more than the whitebacks.
And Ben, I know you asked that question. If you want to connect with us after this, I'll be happy to reach out and we can see if we can connect you and Veronica if you want to dive in a little bit more here, because I know she has a lot of information in her final report that we didn't go over in this event. Um, Veronica, we have a couple of questions about breeding, and
Okay.
so I want to make sure that we get a chance to ask those before we let you go. How far away is the closest known breeding site to the national park?
Again, there isn't any data on breeding sites for the species. So I would say that basically there is very little um, research on the species in Mole National Park and maybe the whole of Ghana.
So,
So
so much to learn.
unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that question. Sorry.
That's okay. I think everyone's just really excited about the work that you've done to try to learn what we know now about the Ruppell's vulture. So one final question that may be kind of difficult to answer related to breeding, since you don't know where the nests are. But your fellow grantee, Hamani, is on and excited to see her here. She was wondering if you want to go ahead with satellite tagging in the future and if you have any plans on how you might do that with this species.
Okay, so I think I've watched, and I'm not an expert in capturing and tagging, but I've watched a couple of vulture capturing videos where they capture them. There's a way they do it. I don't really know how to describe that, but they capture them and are able to tag them, and with um, satellite data, one can tell that, okay, they spend more time over here, and then the research can continue from there. So, yeah, Himani, I didn't find any nests of the Ruppell's vulture, but this is how I plan to go about it, doing capturing and tagging, and that is one of the reasons why I said I would like to attend trainings and workshops on capturing and tagging protocols. Yeah.
That sounds great. We hope that there are some opportunities there for you, Veronica, so that you can expand this research. So I want to make sure that we end on a note that really is focusing on how much more work there is for you to do here, Veronica. So if people are interested or they want to learn more, they want to support you, what do you need and what's the best way to stay in touch with you?
Okay, so I think from this point, what I would need is additional grants from small to medium sized grants to um, do an extensive population study in another dry season using a well-coordinated camera trapping method. When I say a well-coordinated camera trapping method, I mean we have carcass here, carcass there in real time. There's carcass everywhere, and then there are survey teams in each carcass station, and they can monitor that, or we have camera traps in each carcass station, and we can monitor that. And aside that, I would also want to do more studies into assessing local threats and local people's knowledge and use of the species within their communities to establish the baseline for such studies. So if you, additionally, before I forget this, I would also love to take hold of any PhD opportunity in Vulture and research. I'm very open to any PhD opportunity in that area. And you can connect with me via Facebook, but I think email is the best. By email, veronicadanzo@gmail.com. You can connect with me on IG, Facebook, I'm Veronica Danzo. On Twitter, I'm Veronica Dandzo-Adzagudu. Thank you.
Great. Hey, well, I hope that you all have enjoyed taking some time to learn today about the Ruppell's vulture and the work that Veronica has been doing in Mole National Park to try to understand some basic information about the species so that we can take some conservation actions for this critically endangered vulture. So thank you again for joining us today. If you are joining us from Salt Lake County, Utah, again, these presentations are made possible by the Salt Lake County ZAP program. If you are joining us from outside of Salt Lake County, Utah, thank you so much for supporting not just this presentation, but this work. This grant program came out of your support, and we couldn't support people like Veronica without all of you. So thanks again. And thank you, Veronica, for all you've done.
Thank you too for your support, Kristen, and the whole HawkWatch team.
We're so grateful that we were able to partner with you on that. All right, everyone, have a great Friday, have a great weekend, and thank you so much for supporting Raptor conservation. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Kirsty. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Veronica.